Okay, so getting the flow of the maamer. The flow is that the two kinds of Nisim, the Nisim that are higher than Teva, rooted in Shem Havaya, and the Nisim that are invested in Teva, rooted in Shem, Shakai, Shin, Dalet, Yud. So, as it were, they're both divine revelations. Each one of them is a likus. But there are still two dimensions, and the kavanah is, the intent is that there be no division. Min ha'olam va'ad ha'olam. Chesed and Gvura becoming one, and that is possible through the revelation of Tiferes, as we explained yesterday. Compassion, Tiferes, which embraces, validates, incorporates, considers, uses, employs both Chesed and Gvura, and the Hashpah is even greater than just Chesed alone. And this is all expressed in the word Eruv, the Eruv being the mixing, the fusion of the two domains, even though both of them in their own right are Reshus HaYochid, the domain of the divine. At the end of the day, they're two separate expressions and in opposition. So the Eruv, as explained the Gematria and so on, Ayin Beis, Reish Yud Vav, Chesed and Gevura. And then explained Chochmah and likewise Bina as well, the union on all of these levels. Then he went on to say that this is the union of Magid Varav LeYaakov, Hashem's words, which is the brachas mentioned earlier in this capital. So who are they related to? To Yaakov Davke. Because they are avoided to Mamshech Elikus, as Hashem desires, is Davke to the avoid of Tiferes of Yaakov. As he pointed out, that the Chesed per se and Gevura per se produce undesirable results. Then let's continue now. Mamshich Levai by the number 20 in the text. Yeah, we just started yesterday. We'll continue. Yeah. Mamshich Levai, the Alter in the Siddur goes on to explain. Gam b'soifa shel kav emtzoi. Same way that we looked at the higher levels of the middle kav, namely Tiferes and Das, which fuses Chachma and Bina, and Tiferes fuses Chesed and Gevura. The same is also true at the end of the kav. What's at the end? Shebechinas Yisoid. That there is room, notwithstanding the fact that it is the middle kav. In the middle kav we said, unlike Chesed and Gevura, Yaakov's offspring are all complete. Nonetheless, at the end of this Hamshacha, Yisoid, there is an Orla, Yisoid, right? So there's an Orla, there's the covering that needs to be removed. We suggested yesterday that why is this? If it's the middle shaft, the middle kav, there's no yindika techitzonim, there's no nourishing the extraneous forces of klippa. The reason is, in the maamer, I will explain that I would expect it didn't learn the end of the maamer, is because since we're being mamshich, the whole thing, now all the way down, so there's greater tzimtzum. So because there's greater tzimtzum, there's a need to forestall and forewarn that klippa does not nourish. So you mentioned yesterday, klippa would dearly love and does want to be nourished from this yichud of Yisoid. Because it's a union of unity, so therefore the potential to engorge klippa is even greater. Because it's rooted in a very high place. the yichud of Zoh and Malchus, which is affected through Yisoid, right? There's a very deep union. I mean, it's manifested on a very physical level, which is in itself indicative that it comes from a very high place. So to corrupt that union is Klippa's greatest achievement. So therefore, because it's getting now mamash from a very high source. Clear? Yeah? So therefore, there's a need to remove the Orla. So that's the whole of Mila. This cuts off and removes the klippa, the orla, the foreskin, the covering, the concealment. And then as a result of Mila, the extraneous forces cannot grasp, siphon, corrupt any of these hamshachas that come through the middle kav, which are very deep, drawing on the highest level. And this is also what's expressed in the pasuk. Yaakov was a wholesome person, simple person. Yoshev Yeholim, the dweller of the tents. What's Yoshev Yeholim in the plural? Not the dweller of the tent, but the dweller of the tents. This is a reference to the Eidov. The Bina or Malchos. Here is a reference, a hint to the fusion of two tents. The tents of Bina and the tent of Malchos, which are in general, the hidden world, that's Bina. The revealed world, that's Malchos. So how is he the dweller of the tents? Because he was a simple, wholesome person, which means, as it says in Medrash, the mole, tam means whole, really. Tamimus means whole, unblemished. So he was born mohol. He had this mila of Mila, was born circumcised, inyan of Mila, because the inyan of Mila hasora sa'orla, which is the removal of this concealment, payal effect, that there should not be a nourishment to the chitzonim, to the powers of evil, even at the end with this great symptom, which is where they can find their place, even there should be no yenika, which is the level of Yisoid. There too, the union of Mila ensures that Klippa doesn't derive its nourishment, and Dashpa goes where it should. And to be pointed out, by Yaakov himself, he didn't have to actually undergo the process of Mila, for he was born already circumcised. Elo, however, for Ash, as it translates in our Avodah, that is a inyan mitzvah Mila, we have the commandment to perform the mitzvah Mila Shenasa each time, that we should also have this mile of Tamimos, through the Yid, doing his avodah and removing the orla. Before we explain that, we have a question. However, in light of what we said before, so what is a mila? What are we saying now? It's a preventative measure and a necessary one. That there shouldn't be a nourishment to the chitzonim. Even at the end of the hamshach, which means with this great symptom. But that's what we're saying till now. It's not really directly connected to this avodah of fusing alma discussion and alma disgali. It's just to remove a barrier, remove the problem of the lurking forces of Klippa that want to latch themselves on to this hamshacha and engorge themselves. However, so it's only preventative, right? But let's look at the pasuk describing Yaakov. What does it say? Ishtam Yoshev Yeholim. He was a wholesome person, and therefore Yoshev Yeholim, a dweller of tents. Mashma, the inference is that the avodah of Mila is part of this Eidov. Not just removing the keeping the hounds at bay, that mashma shemasho yishtam, the fact that he had the union of milah, zui asibe hayoyse yoshev oyolim, that's why he's able to make the chibur. We have to have the milah in order to affect the fusion, not just to keep the klipa away, but to affect the chibur. And why is that? Because we just explained till now that the union of milah is simply to make sure that the hamshacha remains in kedusha and is not waylaid.
So it's kind of the same thing. The fact that there's no unique tzitzayin, if there's unique tzitzayin, there won't be able to be the result of the two reshuyos.
So it's asking a question, because till now we explained that the achtas of the two reshuyos happens to the avoid of tiferes. To make sure that the lowest level with this tzimtzum that doesn't end up in the wrong place, you have to have the union of milah. But the inference of the pasuk is that Yaakov being a ish tam, having been born mohol, this itself is part of the avodah of the chibur of chesed and gevurah of the eruv. And why is that? The chaysh is a preventative measure. The Yuvim behektem, right? Question's clear. Yeah. Yuvim behektem, klolus habiyah, binya mitzvahs milah. Understand by first giving a general explanation of the mitzvah of milah. Shintztav Avram Avinu, that Avram Avinu was commanded. Mishakosvek, the pasuk says, Hashem says to him, circumcise yourself, and then Yisalech lefanai, and then you will walk before me, ve'yei tomim, and you'll be whole. Again, that word tmimus. So what's the question? The l'cha'ira. Harematzino, we find, so you come with tzaddikim v'neviim, there were tzaddikim and neviim, gam koidim shnitna mitzvahs milah, before milah was commanded, before Avram Avinu. Why did they have to have the mitzvah of milah? Right? Why after Avram? Come itzel Avram atzmai, even Avram himself. Matzino kam in Yonam Shel Navuah, koidim shnima. We find there's certain prophecies that he had even before he was circumcised. So why now, dafke mitamol, does he have to have the meaning of milah? And it's explained in the Kotetayda as follows. When, however, there comes a very lofty revelation, beyond that which was revealed to the tzaddikim before Avram, beyond even to that which was revealed to Avram, till this point, now, dafke, because of the great yichud, the great giloi, we need to have Asara Sa'orla. Haino, meaning, Shafila Oira Orla Davram, even the Orla, the covering of Avram. On his level, this wasn't a concealment, the proof being that it wasn't a barrier to receiving the revelations of the course that he had prior. Nonetheless, this very refined klippa now becomes a concealment. This wasn't even a klippa, but a covering. Al gila elin yoser, relative to a very, and now a new, a loftier gila. She'ena yochel yizgal is that this new gila cannot be revealed. Ela de asara sahel and vahester, through removing a barrier which till now was not a barrier. He'll elaborate. She's a milah, next thing in of milah. So the milah is required over here, not only to affect the eruv, that's the result, but the actual hamshacha, in order for it to be drawn down, since we're talking about a very lofty hamshacha, this requires a new avodah of removing an orla. To be elaborated. And that's why Yaakov, the pasuk says, that in order to be the Yoshev Eiholim, he had to be the Ishtam, because of what's going to be brought about in this Yoshev Eiholim. So in that what's going to be, as a result of this great Gilui, is going to be the fusion of these two domains of Chesed and Gevurah and so on. Union of the hidden and the revealed. There has to be first, even before the whole Amshacha. It's not merely once the Amshacha comes, it shouldn't go in the wrong place. But in order to be mamshich, the Amshacha to begin with has to be in of ishtam, this circumcision, this wholesomeness, in order that the Amshacha be drawn down to start with. Now we're going to explain why. Yeah, we're clear in where we're going with all this. And explanation is as follows. Moedic explanation, friends, coming now in the whole Inyan of Shabbos, the whole Avodah and the whole Gilui of Shabbos and Mila and so on. It's quite fascinating. The Rebbe said this Maimer in Gan Yisrael. The children weren't present for this Maimer. This was already, after the Rebbe spoke to the children and told the various stories, he said, L'chaim on Soda. The children were dismissed. The Rebbe continued and said, the Maimer, then the children came back for Kosher Bracha. All the people that came, was quite a considerable crowd that came. This was the third and final visit. And again, it was, the first one was pre-camp, pre-camp opening 1956, and 57 was where the next year the children were already there, the official opening of camp. And then in 1960 was 200 years of the birth of the Baal Shem Tov, and camp is called after him, Gan Yisrael, so they went the third and final time to camp. I was just speaking yesterday to Rabbi Minkowitz because I wanted to clarify an event that happened when he was present, which we'll presently share in our story. So he told me something which I wasn't aware. This is his own estimation. Rabbi Shem Tov, as you know, made in camp the Yarchi Kala. Yarchi Kala goes back to Talmudic times. I go into the whole story. It was once twice a year, an entire month was devoted to Torah study before Tishrei, before Pesach. At any rate, it's this idea of people coming together and devoting themselves to Torah for a very intense, if not limited time. So he established it in Gan Yisrael in connection with honoring Rabbi Leivik, the Rebbe's father. I think the first year he did it was a milestone in 1974. In 1974 was 30 years. He passed away in 1944. 30 years after the Stalkus of Rabbi Leivik on Chaf Av. He makes it in the summer, Chaf Av, revolving around his yard site and a big expense. Rabbonim, Rosh Yeshivas flown from all over the world. They spent a long weekend there. So Rabbi Minkowitz said that he was hoping, the reason he did the whole thing, but he was hoping that everyone would come. He hadn't come since 1960, this is now 1974. That everyone would come because it was something in honor of his father, 30 years of his father's Istalkos, Yarchi Kala. The Rebbe did not come, and it continued ever since. At any rate, going back to the Maimer. So what are we explaining now? We're explaining now why the union of Orla, of Mila, is required for the Amshacha itself. So Isa ben Medrash says in Medrash, Shol min Echad es Rabbi Akiva, a certain heretic asked Rabbi Akiva, Im kidvarecho, if it is as you say, Shakadosh Boruch mechabed es Shabbos, that Hashem respects Shabbos. Again, that's actually reflected in this pasuk. Magid dvarov, the Yaakov chukov mishpatav Israel. He relates his words, his laws, his statutes. Of course, they're his. Why say his? Just say he relates words, laws, and statutes. Of course, they're Hashem's. They're his commandments. Because unlike mortal kings who issue decrees and consider themselves above the law, Hashem observed the very laws he commands us. So if so, ask the heretic Rabbi Akiva, so he commands you, the Jews, to observe Shabbos. It means he does as well. Therefore, al yoshev baruch, he should not make the wind blow Al Yirid Bakshamim, he shouldn't allow rain to come. Al Yatzmiach Ba'isab, he shouldn't allow vegetation to grow. These are all things, growing, watering, which are forbidden on Shabbos. Now, we'll continue. So Rabbi Kiva answered with a moshel. Two people lived in one courtyard. They need an eruv in order to allow them to carry from their private domains into the courtyard and so on. Continues Rabbi Akiva, but if there's only one person living in the courtyard, he is permissible to carry from his home to the entire courtyard without limit, because he's the sole dweller. Continues Rabbi Akiva Afkan, likewise here, in our case, HaKadosh Boruch, with respect to the Holy One, blessed be He. Since there's no other domain, the whole world is his. He can carry, as it were, from one throughout the entire world. That's the answer of Rabbi Akiva. That's entirely puzzling. To the Cha'ira and you move, and how it's understood how Rabbi Akiva answered the question. The question of the heretic was not merely how does God carry, implied by the rain going from heaven to earth. That wasn't just a question. Carrying out and bringing in achnasa. But how does God transgress all 39 labors that are completely unrelated to the whole business of domains, like growing? The growing was not only it's in the earth, it now comes above ground. I don't know. I always had this question, mind, because it's a famous medrash, and the Mefarshim must ask it also. But, and the footnotes don't point us to any Mefarshim, which is not the nature of the mind. Look at the Sichas word, the way we always bring out the answers. So if you remind me, I'll look up and see what the Mefarshim answer on the medrash. This medrash, okay, this basic Mefarshim on the medrash and Abba, we'll look it up. So here's the answer to Chassidus. As far as I know, there isn't, mind you. But anyway, the answer is as follows. The answer needs to be understood, but let's see the answer of Chassidus. So what's the whole Indian of the 39 labors that we are forbidden to do on Shabbos? What are we doing? We're elevating the spark that fell into Kashmirs, into the physical world, from the lofty level of Toyo, the shattering of the vessels. And just to take it further, as we all know, where do we derive what labors are forbidden on Shabbos? Because the prohibition, or rather the commandment, the prohibition not to do malach on Shabbos follows what? After the description of the Mishkan. And what's the Mishkan? The Mishkan is all about making the world a home for God. So on Shabbos we don't do that. There's no need, as we'll see. So we're not engaging the world and elevating its sparks, making the world a Mishkan. Why not? So again, what are the malachas which we do during the week? That's all about engaging the world and elevating it into kedusha. And this is what it says in the Seres HaDibros. For 6 days you shall work. Now that sounds like a commandment. And in fact it is. Kedis, it's a big chiddush. But Kedis b'mechilta, the medrash on Sefer Shmos says, Zo mitzvahs aseh, not just you may work, but you should work. Why? Because that's the reason the neshama came down to the guf. Nilam hazeh is to engage the world and elevate in its kedusha. Shezegin avodas berurim. That's avodas berurim, and that's the simple meaning of the pasuk. Not 6 weeks you may, but you should. However, b'Shabbos tarich lis hashvis malacha. On Shabbos we're not allowed to do work. Ki b'Shabbos b'Eiruv also on Shabbos, one of the 39 labors is extracting you're not allowed to remove the unwanted from the wanted. You can't remove the bone from the fish, which is why we have gefilte fish to avoid the problem. Why? Because extracting the nitzutze kedusha, which is, as long as the davar gashmi is something negative, to extract it and elevate it on Shabbos is forbidden. Why? Because Shabbos will not engage in elevating and fixing the world. However, this is all when we're looking at Toihu and the result of the fallout of Toihu, the avodah during the week, and Shabbos we don't. But if we go beyond Toihu, the whole union of elevation of Berurim doesn't apply, because the whole avodas Berurim happened as a result of the Shviras HaKelim in Toihu. So high in Olam HaToyah, where there's pure Gilul Elikus, and there's no the emergence of the Koyach HaGvul of Hashem's finite power has not emerged then yet then to contain the Gilui causing the shattering. What's higher there? As we learned in the previous Maamar, Vata Yigdal HaKoyach Adnai, that Lifnei HaTzimtzum, higher than Toihu. What did we learn? That's the Shmoi HaGadol. Shmoi goes on Kelim. Shmoi is Taka Gvul, but it's Shmoi HaGadol. The Gvul there does not, it's all one. It's not in conflict with the Bli Gvul, therefore causing a shattering in their encounter, but it's all him. Gvul and Bli Gvul is all one. So there's no need to refine and elevate, because not lost high in Olam HaToyah, what's perceptible and seen there is that the Koyach HaGvul and Koyach HaBli Gvul is all him. It's only in the lower level when the Tzimtzum starts to emerge and creates a real sense of limitation and division, and there it appears to us to eclipse Hashem's presence, to limit him. So now we need the whole avodah of the Tikkun, and to reveal down here that Shmoi HaGadol, that was the whole Maamar, that even down here we see that Koyach HaGvul, notwithstanding its external appearance, but through avodah they reveal that all this limitation and everything which is part of Elam Hazeh and the whole history and the whole Golus, it's all Elikus. And reveal that truth in the Gvul where Lamata. That's the whole avodah. It's a huge avodah, because as a result of Shviras HaKelim, which means Shviras HaKelim means when the Tzimtzum continues to produce finite Kelim Mamish, which to the viewer are limitation. And as a result of that, Elam Hazeh, fragmented world of pure limit and conflict and strife and goals and everything else. So there's a 3,000-year avodah to reveal that no, all of this is all rooted in the Koyach HaGvul, and it's all Shmoi HaGadol, and everything is repaired and healed down here. And oneness is brought in the domain of multiplicity, Eruv. But that's all post-Toihu. But high in the avodah of Toihu, Shom, continue now in the text, Mutarim Kol HaMalachos, all of the malachis are permissible, because all of these activities are not about extracting and the hidden spark, hidden in Gashmi, that conceals it in Klippa. All of these activities are pure revelations of Elikus. We'll elaborate further. So therefore, having said this, we'll now go back to the conversation. The dialogue between the heretic and Rabbi Akiva. So the true taka that the heretic was asking about all the malachas, and all Rabbi Akiva had to say was talking about the whole world on being Hashem's domain. He gave him a mashal of different reshuyos. He's telling you that what we have in the face of a revelation where there's no distinction between one domain and the other. Pre-tzimtzum, gvul and bli gvul is all him, havaya hu alikim. That's what's revealed there. Shezoi b'chinas ak. This is the level of Adam Kadmon. Sheker is kolas habri that incorporates all of the bria. It's like a post-tzimtzum ak. But it's this very lofty level where there's no division yet. Like shayach gaminya berurim, so the whole berurim, the whole melach is not shayach. Because it's a rarefied world that doesn't have to be fixed and elevated. The Shamud taught him call him malachas, and therefore all of the so-called forbidden malachas are permissible because they're not the same mandate. They're not fixing anything. Therefore, he causes the wind to blow, and the rain comes, and things grow. Let's conclude the chapter. So now we understand in greater depth the greatness of the fusing of these two domains. Which is a very lofty revelation, which is higher than Shabbos. We're describing now as a revelation that's even higher than Shabbos. Why? Because Shabbos says we're not dealing with, it's not very clear in the mind, but this is the pshat. Shabbos melacha is also. What does that mean? Because on Shabbos we are not dealing with this world. We are elevated to a higher world, a foretaste of Moishe Mashiach, when the world is elevated. But the fact is there is a world out there, which is why you may not go there. So there are two domains on Shabbos. Except that on Shabbos we enter into the higher world, the Rosh Hashanah. Until such time that the whole world becomes Yom Shekuli Shabbos. But Shabbos alone, in observance of it, has not yet brought that realization. But then there's the inyan of Erev Rishuyos. Shabbos says, don't go there, don't carry. But then there's that way of Erev Rishuyos, which is like inyan of Milah we're going to see, which actually fuses the two. And makes even this world the Rosh Hashanah that's inside.
It's not that you're allowed to do beer.
Pardon?
It's not that you're allowed to do beer, it's that there's nothing to be mevarer and
nothing to be mevarer anymore, exactly.
Because even what seems like it needs a beer, it's all kedusha.
It's all kedusha, exactly. And here comes the Erev Rishuyos, which goes beyond the Shabbos mandate. Shabbos says, don't go there. But Shlomo Melech was masakin in the Erev that you could carry there. That this is a very lofty revelation. We mentioned the previous Maimon, the paradox that's dafket akonos chachamim. Shlomo Melech, let me explain. The minhag is even higher. That's mamshich, even the higher levels of likus than Torah itself, where the commandment to observe Shabbos is expressed. This is the Erev Rishuyos Shalom Maila Filu Magilu Erdem Shabbos, which is higher than Shabbos. The Shabbos says, don't go there. Don't elevate the world to him. You're getting a reprieve. You're being elevated to a higher place where what? You don't have to elevate the world. And after Shabbos, you go back into the world and you'll go back to fix it. Comes the Erev, and on Shabbos we're fixing the world, as it were. To remove the boundary. The two domains become one. The union of Erev is so great that it devolves these divisions. It becomes all one domain, which is called the domain of the singular. Now, going back to Rabbi Akiva's answer, we must say, therefore, we have to remember to read into this. We have to say that Rabbi Akiva is telling, it's one of two things. It's either he's telling him that from Hashem's perspective, but not ours, only God's perspective, it's now all one rishus, and therefore all the malachas are permissible for Hashem. It's one possibility he's saying, possible. Or he's saying that Hashem on Shabbos follows and is mekayim the mitzvah of Erev, and because he's mekayim the mitzvah of Erev, it all becomes one domain. And again, Lamates Malachis become of a whole different order, not fixing the world anymore and become permissible.
But that doesn't answer the question because when we do the mitzvah of Eruv, it's not the same thing.
Our mitzvah of Eruv is almost symbolic of that. It is. It's a step in that direction, and Eruv, where a domain where you could not carry to, you now come. We've created a unity in Olam Hazeh, which is the four shadow, the four.
Our ability to tap into that.
Pardon?
It's our limited ability.
It's our ability to tap into the time when Taka the whole world will be the Shus HaYachid. So either he's saying for the Eibishter now it is, already now, because, the two suggestions I gave are really one. Because the Eibishter is Mekayim, the mitzvah of Eid, because we are. It's really one thing. It's somewhat of tenuous a little bit, but that l'chayr is the pshat. We, in other words, we do the Eidov, but doesn't allow us to do the other malachas yet. It's a step in that direction. But by doing the Eidov, this sets in motion the whole unity of Alma Disgali, of Alma Diskasya, and from the Eibishter's perspective, on some level, it's complete. And therefore, for Hashem, there's no more Lamates Malachas altogether. We start that process in the mitzvah of Eidov, setting it in motion. That's the pshat. Okay, so that we're going to continue this to the meaning of Milah that reveals this level to be explained further. And in Avodah.